Pledge of allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You have a report, Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Officers Down Memorial, we're up to 47. Just a couple quick stats, Mr. Chair, if I may. Average age of the officers that we've lost is 43. Average tour of duty is 14 years. Oregon has not lost an officer to date. Of course, we're hoping and praying that that stat will not change. Staggering numbers, though, for the last 5 years. 2017 was the worst year, almost 180. A 5-year average of 176 officers we lose per year. Fallen heroes, we're now at 16 for this year to date. 3 were killed within the last week. And I've failed to mention first responders, firefighters. We have lost 19 to date for 2019, a total of 85 LODD in the line of duty for 2018. So I'll keep the board updated on that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I would also like to say on a comment about that, I learned this week that as many, or I'm sorry, it was more than the loss of law enforcement for the year has been, it's been equaled in suicide. So people think that being in law enforcement and military isn't a challenge, dealing with having to take someone's life from them, or being in some of the situations that our law enforcement and military firefighters and included in that have to deal with. It's a lot. And I was just shocked to learn that more law enforcement have died this year in suicide than through a loss of life from guns, or
In line of duty.
In the line of duty, yes. So
Thank you.
it was an interesting point. So let's start with our agenda. If we could, can I get a motion?
I move that we approve the agenda as written.
Have a second?
I have no changes for the agenda. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will second that motion.
Any further discussion?
I just have two.
Oh, I'm sorry, Julie.
Item K and L are not ready, so when we get to that, we just won't take action, or we can pull them now.
That's on the consent, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll just pull them now then?
We can.
Yeah, okay.
A little
Let's
easier.
do it now.
All right, let's just go ahead and pull K and L off of the consent agenda then.
So I will amend my motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Okay.
Second, Mr. Chair.
Any further comments? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold,
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce,
Yes?
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
So I think we're going to save the comments on the Lake Flores until the Lake Flores discussion action item. But I do see Ms. Crook in the audience, and I don't want to tie her up, so if I have a public comment from Cena Crook, I'd like to hear that now, please. Morning.
Good morning. I'm Cena Crook. I am a county employee, and I'm also a member of SEIU, the union that governs the one of the group of workers here.
Cena,
So anyway, we're in current negotiations, and
talking to a microphone.
Pull that one down. on
Pull
your
it down
right.
a little bit. Yeah, there you go. We can't hear you that well.
we are currently in negotiations with the county for openers. We have a 3-year contract. We're in year 3 of that contract, and there have been openers each year for economics. And so the negotiations are open to the public. We have asked for no less than a 5% COLA, 2 1/2 steps that would bring us up to the 2012 wages, and full cost of health insurance premiums. We were offered a 3% COLA. Our step increases were denied, and we were offered a specific amount that may be close to the actual cost of insurance renewal. Following the county's offer, we have had 2 meetings with our members, and the responses remain consistent. Although we appreciate the offer of the increase in insurance premium payment and the 3% COLA offer, but we have only received 2 cost of living increases since 2010. Last year, the Teamsters bargaining unit were given a 2.75 COLA, and non-representatives were given 2.5%. while we were given 2.13% COLA. So it doesn't make sense to us that the cost of living is different among different groups of people in the same county. So we are still behind on the cost of living, and the 3% that's offered is not going to make us equal, as the BOC says they are trying to do. We are also frustrated that the BOC is not willing to give us the step increases to get us up to today's wages. We SEIU employees are the ones remaining after numerous employee layoffs, staff reductions, and department consolidations during the past years. We are dedicated, hardworking, well-qualified employees and proud of the work we do for the citizens of the county. Of the 19 SEIU employees, only 2 are above Step B in the wage scale, which is the second lowest of 6 steps. With the few steps we have been able to receive since 2010, we are still only at 2011 wages. The county continues to hire replacements for employees that have left and pay them at wages higher than the departing employee was paid. We understand it is difficult to find qualified workers for the wages we are paid, but it is not fair that we continue struggling to make ends meet while new employees receive higher wages. There are also many situations where the resigned employee is hired back at higher wages to train the new employee. We are feeling that the only way to get a raise is to quit and be rehired when it is obvious our positions cannot be filled at the wage you are currently paying us. For these reasons, our members urge you to agree with our request to the full step increase in addition to the 3% COLA and insurance increase. So thank you for the time so that I can explain to the public our situation. Thank you.
All right, all the other comments that I have are on the Lake Flores land swap, so we'll move on with the consent agenda. And having pulled K&L from the consent agenda, there is one thing on the consent agenda I would like to talk a little bit about. Should we pull that out to...
Yes, why don't we pull it out and move it to discussion then?
Okay, I want to pull J out and put it in discussion, and this is the adoption of personnel rules. And there's, I think somehow just something that got left out that was accidental, hopefully, and we can get it dealt with. So we're pulling I'm pulling J out, and then K and L have already been taken out. So as far as the consent agenda, what's left is to approve BOC minutes from April 17th, May 22nd, order for contract extension for Assistant County Counsel Services Shayla McKenzie, order to renew contract with Able Insurance for 1 year, order to renew our liability insurance with CIS, which is the City County Insurance Services for fiscal 2019-20, order to renew our workman's compensation insurance, order to approve intergovernmental agency contract for the Department of Revenue 157-19, hire order for a temporary flagger, hire order for a deputy tax collector, and that would be it. May I get a motion, please?
I'll move, Mr. Chair, to approve consent agenda items A through I.
Second.
Further comments? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold,
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce,
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Okay, so we're going to move on to discussion action items. 5A would be Lake Flores land swap. We're going to do the comments first, please, and then we'll go to council huddle. So my first comment card is filled out by Mary Rowe.
Yeah, right on top.
Chair Pash, and thank you. I'm Mary Rowe. I'm here to speak about the proposed land swap with Oregon Parks and Recreation, or OPRD. Our county government is financially challenged and does not have sufficient income. Accordingly, Commissioner Pash is even continuing to consider a consumption tax that could damage our low-income citizens, and yet we are ready to give away a huge asset to the state in exchange for about a third less land that is not suitable to be used for much with a dump. We cannot afford to do this until we have a better deal with OPRD. If I understand correctly, it now seems that negotiating for McVeigh Rock would only take a few months rather than 2 years. So it would be assured that all of our county commissioners would still be in office and thus would vote for the deal. So OPRD would not need to worry that taking a few more months to finish negotiating could lead to failure. I do not think that we have the luxury of counting on OPRD, however, despite the district manager's intentions, as higher-level administrators could decide not to give us McVeigh Rock. We need a promise in writing before giving away 90 acres of lakefront property. We in Curry have a history of being taken advantage of because our people are generous and trusting, but now we must save our county. Please remember that when you consider signing the land swap order today, you are signing on behalf of about 22,000 people. Surely, for such an asset, OPRD would wait one last time. We now have a County Director of Operations, Julie Schmelzer, who has the knowledge, skills, commitment, and proven track record to finish this deal in a way that is fair to all. She has stated that it is not yet equitable, as has our county assessor. And Chair Pash, who has considerable and varied business experience, has stated that we need to continue to negotiate. Changing our minds is difficult but necessary at times. Please have the wisdom and courage to do so. We can only apologize and act responsibly in future interactions. Please do not sign the land swap deal today. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Barnes?
Good morning, David Barnes. I've been watching this happen in front of this board for a while now, probably since I started coming to meetings a few years ago. And one of the things that Mr. Chair, I kind of disagree with you. You know, business is business, yes, but I don't believe the county government is business. I believe the county government is a social contract that you have with the people of the county. You weren't appointed to be the board of directors of a company who are looking to maximize shareholder value. You're elected as commissioners to represent the will of the people. And again, I see a room full of people here who would like you to act on their behalf and to do this deal. You know, not all decisions can be so cold and calculating as just based on numbers. We have stakeholders in this. And the stakeholders have spoken, and they've spoken repeatedly and asked for this deal to be put through. You know, you don't always get the deal that you want. You know, sometimes, you have to vote for something that's not everything that you want. You know, you can't let the possible stand in the way, or you can't let the perfect stand in the way of the possible, which is what I believe it could happen here. I just like, this is what the people of this county want. You're their representatives, that you were elected to represent them. Very few people have spoken against this. Most speak in favor of it. And Commissioner Pash, I'd really hope that today you would change your vote and vote in favor of this to show a unanimous board to the State Parks Department that, yes, we do want to work with you in the future. McVeigh and Flores Lake are two separate and completely different issues. You know, holding back on Flores Lake in hopes of getting McVeigh, I don't think is what's the right thing to do. As the representative from State Parks said last week, there's a 12-to-1 price variance between the two of them. $2.5 million to $200,000. And if McVeigh is something that we can do in the future, great. But I think that the way to pave the road towards a deal on McVeigh is to be unanimous in your approval of the Flores Lake land swap. Thank you.
Thank you. And Morgan? Sorry.
Good morning.
morning. I'm Ann Morgan, Hunter Creek Road. I wasn't here in town for the last meeting, and so I sent the three of you emails about my position, and so I'm not going to speak for a long time. But first I'm going to thank Commissioner Boyce because you responded to my email, and I wanted to say that I appreciate that you always respond to my emails even if we don't necessarily agree, so I appreciate that. So Hunter Creek Road, and I am in favor of the land swap. As I've mentioned in the past, I've been a part of the South Coast for many, many years and have enjoyed the area at Flores Lake, Blacklock Point, and have watched how those areas have become more viable in terms of tourism. And also, we understand that even though there is that beautiful area that we're talking about swapping that's on the coast, it's not really viable for development. And so although we may be seeing it as this wonderful carrot, the carrot that we're seeing is not necessarily the carrot that State Parks is seeing, because of all of the issues that you already know and that we've been following, and that many of you and most of you in the audience who've lived in this area for a long time have followed. So I did like what Dave said about the social contract, and so I would like you to urge you to continue to work with the agreement as it's now stated, and that it isn't just about a few North County folks that want to have their way on this, but rather it's a North County jewel that we can continue to use in terms of promoting tourism in the area. And the North County is becoming more robust in tourism, and that will just be another jewel in that bucket that they have that includes places where people bicycle to and stop at the various stores in Port Orford and Langless and stop at the hotels in the area and the B&Bs. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your service. And I hope that you will go ahead and go forward with the deal as constructed. Thank you.
Thank you. Tim Scull?
Thank you. I appreciate this opportunity to both of these work.
There you go.
Opportunity to talk to you. I really get excited about public discussion. My name's Tim Scull, and I live in Gold Beach here. I appreciate this opportunity to have different opinions about this very important subject, Flores Lake. And hearing Mary, I appreciate her concerns. And some of the few negative things I've heard about the land swap coming from her today. Through the past 10, 15 years, most of what I've heard has been positive, supporting this process and getting us to where we are now. It's been a lot of work, and I didn't think I was going to be here commenting on this again, so I wasn't really prepared. But I would say I support the process. I support the decision that we sort of came to at the last meeting. And I would like to see this go forward. Mary talked about people being taken advantage of, and it reminded me of Lakeport. It was like some people were taken advantage of there. That's how we ended up with this property. And the property's been sitting there since the 1930s, I believe, not doing a whole bunch. And I think this is our opportunity to move on. We have a lot of important things to talk about with the county here. And I'd like to move beyond this and talk about the future and some other things that we can do. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Julie Bolt?
Commissioners, my name is Julia Bott. I live on Tuttle Lane in Harbor. And as you know from previous testimony, I support the land transfer and I urge your adoption of the resolution as you have it today. This transfer does not preclude future agreements with State Park about McVeigh. But by its very nature, the transfer with McVeigh, or the use of McVeigh through a lease agreement or some other method, since it's at the beginning of the process, it's just more complicated for both you, the county, and for State Parks. While State Parks is going through their process, I would urge you to look at some other things about those South County properties, possibly Social Security Bar and McVeigh. What's the market study? What use and demand? What price will people pay? What's the cost of development, maintenance, and management? Have some communication with the user groups who may or may not be so happy about this deal. You could be doing all of that while State Parks is proceeding with their process. And then you could come up with a great resolution for those properties and for your needs. But with respect to this, I think you should keep it simple and keep it separate. Thank you.
Thank you. Peg Reagan?
Peg Reagan, Gold Beach. This transfer has been voted on twice already. We hope this is the last time. I know you're relatively new to the area and new to local government, but one vote should have been enough. This resolution should have been on the agenda at the last meeting. We hear, why the rush? It only seems like a rush if you haven't been following the issue over the years. For those of us who have, calling it a rush seems like a political scam. I can't help but wonder if this is the first time you've ever lost a vote and don't know how to deal with it. It didn't go your way, so delay, delay, delay. First with the fantasy of a sale to a major corporation for carbon sequestration. Then the thought of a transfer with McVeigh Park. Then staff not providing the resolution in a timely manner. Now we see your wife on Facebook and letters to the editor with misinformation and attempts to rally the masses to overturn the board's repeated votes in support of this transfer. And even though citizens from Central and South County have commented in favor many times, it's as though we don't exist, with accusations that the transfer will only benefit a small group of landowners. I shouldn't have to remind you that the prior board, including 2 commissioners from the South County, voted unanimously to move forward on this transfer last year. And I understand that the countywide League of Women Voters supports this trade. The March 25th letter to the board from M.G. Devereaux, if I pronounced that correctly, Deputy Director of Oregon Parks, stated that this trade would, and this is a quote, take advantage of the investment in staff time, appraisals, and broad public support. It's rare all these factors align at the same time, end quote. That's the only rush now. Appreciate the alignment he refers to and finalize the transfer at last. Thank you.
Vicki Graham?
Hi, I'm Vicki Graham. I live in Port Orford, and I just wanted to thank Commissioner Gold and Commissioner Boyce for supporting this land swap, Flores Lake, and I hope that you will continue to support this today. Thank you.
Ann Vaselis?
Morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
I hope this will not be a new discussion today, since you've already voted 2 times on May 8th and May 22nd to move ahead with the Flores Lake land swap. We really appreciate your decisions to move forward and to be the board that finally gets this done and across the finish line after so many years. But since I don't know what discussion will ensue after the public comments are closed, I just wanted to make an effort to clarify a few things that were, in my opinion, either misconstrued or misunderstood from the last meeting. 3 things. 1, it was stated that the Port Orford Cedar property has a deed restriction that means only recreational use can be allowed. To clarify, at a board meeting last fall, some of you may remember, Mr. Huddle specifically asked about removing that deed restriction. And State Parks agreed to do the work needed to negotiate removing that deed restriction. So the State Parks Commission approved that last June, getting rid of that other deed, and the appraisal of the both properties, which came out, which was made to be equivalent, was based on no deed restriction. So if the removal of that restriction has not yet been 100% fully recorded, it is in the works and will surely be completed before the transaction would be finalized. So that's just one clarification. Another, it was suggested that the deal is being rushed. And I would just like to clarify that the deal has actually been in works for a very long time, and it's proceeded step by step since the County Real Property Task Force recommended moving forward with the land swap back in 2013. Previous county commissioners have given ideas and direction to staff to engage with the community, to consider starting a county forest perhaps, to move ahead in discussion with state parks and other things along the way. Through previous commission discussions and decisions, we have proceeded step by step to arrive at this deal. Since these kinds of things take a long time to work through all the various details, significant investment in staff time, appraisals, and broad public support, I want to, again, quote Deputy Devereaux, which I guess Peg did. It's rare that all these factors align at the same time. And that's why there is actually tremendous value in this deal. It's an example for how things get done, that it takes so long, and we have it all right now. So it's an important thing to recognize. Finally, it was suggested that pursuing the current land swap, by pursuing that, the county is foregoing a more lucrative deal that could be made by trading the entire property for McVeigh Rock, this comment was made this morning also. To clarify, this is not quite accurate. State Parks has indicated that it will not trade for the entire Flores Lake parcel at this time. They've indicated that considering a land swap for McVeigh Rock would in fact be far more complicated, and at the last meeting they said could take up to 10 years, which is why previous county and state park staff decided instead to pursue a more feasible deal as a pilot project to make sure the county and state could work well together, and then proceed with other possible deals. The state parks has indicated that they would prefer to consider the McVeigh parcel as part of a master planning process. Through such a process, you could consider a long-term leasing arrangement, which would be less complicated, could provide the county with a steady revenue into the future, and could also provide for a more public and transparent process for citizens in that part of the county that I'm sure will have interest in that as well. So this is a situation where there are actually two deals, and we can actually have the benefits of both. I think the idea is to succeed, we must proceed sequentially with diligence and focus, just as we have with the current deal to the next one. So I hope that clarifies some misunderstandings, and I hope you will vote again for the land swap by making a motion and passing the resolution today. The third time, I hope, will be the charm, and I really appreciate the commission taking action to get this across the finish line, and hopefully to move on and tackle so many other important things. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob Morrow. JJ.
Good morning, Bob Morrow, Langlois. This is beginning to feel like baseball democracy where we have 3 strikes to get to 1 no. It's an unfortunate approach. This is Flores Lake land swap is a good opportunity for Curry County and will pave the way for more opportunities with state parks going forward. As we move forward, there have been several points used to argue against the land swap that are simply not accurate, and it's changed how the swap is perceived and that property has been perceived. For example, the elevations of the 2 properties are in fact very different, with Flores Lake elevation at about 6 feet, and the property to be swapped is in the immediate tsunami zone, while the Port Orford Cedar property at 164 feet is miles away from the tsunami zone, and at no point is the level ground there lower than the Flores Lake wetlands. There are no structures of any kind on either property, so there is nothing to be cleaned or maintained. According to Mr. Havel from State Parks, as we've heard this morning, the recreation restrictions on the property is in the works to be lifted, which changes the amount of usage that's available there. The other falsehood we've heard is this is only for Langlois Flores Lake residents, and I think I'm the only person from Langlois here this morning that you've heard from. You've heard from Brookings and Gold Beach. With those clarifications, here's a starter list of some options and what you can do with it, because I've heard it's a useless piece of property. You can create a roadside wayside with a boardwalk designed by Oregon Parks and Recreation Department to walk through this unique habitat. And that this would keep tourists in the county longer so they could spend more money here while preserving a unique habitat. You could establish a county campground, although this would compete with the KOA down the road. You could create a primitive camping space reserved for the steady stream of bicycles that come through there every year. You could create a forestry education center in conjunction with Pacific High School, working with SWAC or OSU. These are all just ideas. Use the 33 acres for a public disaster preparedness center. Storage or communications could be there. You could use it for public safety as needed for communications or otherwise by the sheriff. And include in the first addition to the county forest. Develop a forestry plan for regular harvesting. These are just options. Choose one. Log and replant and use again. You could sell the property to a timber company. Sell the property to a farmer for a cranberry bog because it's been noted that there is wetland there. There are other agricultural uses. You could sell the property as a home site, which was, by the way, considered the highest and best use of the property in the property appraisal. You could lease the property, perhaps a cell phone tower communication, and help improve the county network.
No cell towers, no.
No cell towers, okay. I think the sheriff would like to have better cell towers. You could lease it for a horse camp stable, maybe be able to sell beach rides down there. You could build a pole barn, and that pole barn could be used as a lease property for small businesses. The Lord knows we need another log carving company down along the road. Farmers market, bicycles could spend overnight there. Winter feed storage facility in the log barn. With the correct zoning, perhaps a student hangout from across the street, a pizza bar, taco truck parking, refrigerated for cranberry processing, refrigerated for hang game to cure, meeting room for county business.
Oh.
These are options. Talk about them. Maybe a church service is there. Pistol shooting range, if the shooting range is not a good idea. And we have 2 lots on either side. You have more than one location you can do these things with. You could apply for a grant from the Gates Foundation, such was done with the Lomas Forest or the Northwest Ecosystem Alliance. You could leverage the Port Orford Cedar 33 acres and a swap with another state agency. Do the swap, move on to phase 2. My time's out. Thank you.
Mr. Rogers?
I'm Jim Rogers. I'm a forester. I was a timber manager for Western States Plywood for a number of years, and I discovered the Boyce Ranch shortly after I started working there at Western States, and I kind of needed a place to go where I wasn't slaughtering old-growth forest for 5 days a week, year after year. And I discovered the Blacklock area, and I never had seen anything like that. That was totally out of the realm of anything that I was familiar with. And for the past 50-some years, I've been going out there to Blacklock and Flores Lake. During those years, I became an avid birder. And this Flores Lake area is one of the best places for birding. People come from all over the country and all over the world sometimes when a rare bird shows up and they want to see it. And it's totally different than any place else that I've ever seen, and I think I've heard a lot of other people say the same. It's just once in a lifetime opportunity to first walk out there in Blacklock Point and look at the ocean and the rock quarry, and I could go on and on about what a cool place this is, but I think you all know that by now, and so I just want to plead with you to pass this legislation and make sure that this area is protected forever. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, moving on. Do we have any further comments from the board?
Sure, Mr. Chair. Do you want to go?
Commissioner Boyce?
Well, Curry County's taken action, and I'm very happy about that. You know, later on today, we have a presentation from our parks coordinator, and it's on 3 pieces of Elk River property. I heard Ms. Velisis remind us the value. Frankly, I think Curry County got a very good deal here. I wouldn't have voted and supported for this. And the reason I think it's a good deal is because it's 33 acres, very close to the airport, very close to our secondary county shop, the high school, Highway 101. If you walk through it, at least parts of it, it's an incredible coastal forest. It has tremendous conifer diversity. You bet it needs cleared as far as fire fuels, ladder fuels that we're all becoming more and more aware of. I had the privilege of spending 2.5 days with Supervisor George, all 5 of his district rangers, Gold Beach, Powers, Butte Falls, Applegate, known as Siskiyou, and if I didn't mention Powers. Anyway, what you're going to hear from Parks Coordinator Hopkins today, I think our county parks is in very good hands, and I think we're moving forward. It took me 2 years, but we got an Parks Advisory Committee with some very good, qualified people, and I don't want to speak for the board, but I think there's general agreement that Director Hopkins is doing very well. And within that Parks Advisory Committee, we are positioning our county we're just getting started on what we can do in a unified effort to work towards increased tourism, back to the value I believe we got in this deal. It's been referred to as swampland. I think that the wetlands adds to the value, personally myself, because it has that great diversity beyond just timber and location, etc. So the reason I brought up the forest supervisors, because I'm bold enough to ask for property due to the fires, due to the track record that I believe we're expanding on in management towards these parks. And so when you put a value on the state efforts and commitment to obviously develop a parks trails plan, what that can mean to our future generations and our visitors to Curry County and our citizens, I think that has tremendous value. And so I think today, I hope, Mr. Chair, that it's a formality and we get this done and that we show the citizens that we're ready to move to the next phase, which is hopefully McVeigh Park. And I'm very optimistic with that. I've had Dennis Comfort on the river before. I've had Todd Davidson, 20-year parks director. He's the head guy for Travel Oregon. He'll be a resource for us. He loves Curry County. So you put all these people together, I'm very optimistic about the future. I just need help. We all need help, and we need to start today with this so these folks don't have to come here again. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Gold?
I just want to say that by showing cooperation with the state, they are going to be more willing to work with us on McVeigh property. And by some of the questions that I asked the parks person last time, that their willingness to do a long-term lease is right there. He said he could do it within 6 months. I've talked to Josh about setting up some sort of place there in McVeigh Park where we could maybe do an RV park. I noticed that he said that there were a number of spaces that we could put together there, and I can see the county being able to generate some revenue from McVeigh Park on a long-term basis, and this is what we need. We need to have this stream of revenue. Kind of like the port of Brookings Harbor, they have their RV park there. It's kind of run down, but that's their biggest source of revenue there. So I think we need to think positively and move forward by voting for this land swap. Thank you.
I guess I'll have the closing comment on this. It saddens me a little bit that I hear disdain in some of the comments that are made to me here, because I felt like some of them were intentionally directed at me. This is the United States of America, and yes, we still do have the civil right to be able to go out and express our heartfelt feelings about things. If that offends some people, I'm sorry. I'm not here to do what's best for a small group. I'm here to speak for the constituents of the county. I personally don't feel like it's a good deal. I think the county could do better. That's just my opinion. I also feel I disagree with Mr. Barnes in the fact that I think some local governments need to be run more like a business, because when you run a government like a business, you have a budget, you follow your budget, you set up and you prepare for things. You don't just do things off the cuff. Not saying that this is something that's been done off the cuff. I'm speaking to the way county governments and federal governments, state governments should perhaps be run, in my opinion again, more like a business than a government. They're run more efficiently that way. That's, again, my personal opinion. I feel like I kind of got behind the 8 ball on this a little bit because I've been the one that's been here the shortest. We've got a couple of commissioners that have been kicking this around for a few years, and I'm sure everyone in this room is tired of hearing about Lake Flores, and let's get it done. I have never been against doing the Lake Flores deal. I have always said since the beginning, since well before I was elected, that I would love to see this property conserved in perpetuity. I felt like if we were just starting to open up some things, I was trying to learn more about it, and all of a sudden we started to get a lot of pressure I started to feel a lot of pressure from some people in North County that I felt was a little bit premature, because I would hope you would give me a little bit more latitude on it. Since our last meeting, I've had a couple of conversations with the Parks Department, and I think we have a very good relationship with the Parks Department. I've also been CC'd on some continuing conversations through Ms. Schmelzer in their offices on some of the things that are in the works, and I feel no matter how I vote here, I don't believe that it'll affect our relationship with the Parks Department. I actually would hope the Parks Department, as I would all of you, would respect that I'm trying to do the best thing and get the best deal as I can for this county. So if I could have gotten McVeigh or something else included into that deal, I would hope that you all would have been pleased with that. That has not happened to this point. So getting back to the relationship, I think the relationship with the Parks Department is very good. I think it will continue to grow and be strong. Again, I cannot, in my heart, vote for something that I do not believe is a good deal. Do I hope that it turns out to be a good deal? Yes, I do. Do I hope our relationship with Parks continues to grow? I do. But I will also tell you, I'm not trying to stand in the way of letting this happen. I believe we're going to have a very positive vote here, because you've just heard 2 commissioners say yes. Again, I have to vote my conscience on that, so I hope you'll all appreciate that as a democracy that we are, and we can move forward. With that being said, do I have a motion?
So move, Mr. Chair, that we do the final resolution onto an order. Correct me if I'm wrong, Council Huddle, and it becomes official today. That's a crazy motion, I know.
You have to excuse me, Council. I forgot to defer to you on that, so forgive me for that.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Boyce asked me a question. I was just trying to respond to
I understand.
Yeah, in your packet is a resolution, and my understanding is this is what the state was asking for from us, was a indication of future direction and a selection of options, and that they will then, once we give this to them, they'll start to work on the documentation. So I understand there's a couple more steps to go, but this is the first step officially, and it's a communication to the state saying we want to go with whatever it was, option 1 or what have you.
So do we turn that motion from a resolution to an order?
It is a resolution right now.
Okay.
I personally don't believe we have the documentation from the state to adopt a final order finalizing the deal. We don't have anything from them. So,
Commissioner?
Excuse me.
Yes.
And I would just like to add to that, after the last meeting, I did reach out to Oregon Parks because I was instructed to find out exactly what they needed. They never did get back to me on exactly what they needed for our decision today. So we're going with the resolution. And just to add that we did promise the public all along that we would make a decision on June 5th. So yes, we've had several meetings on it. It's not like we were kicking the cat down the road. We're doing exactly what we said. And that is we're making a decision one way or the other on June 5th. We just don't know for sure exactly what Oregon Parks needs because they didn't get back to us on that.
And there's another comment that, here's something. How many of you would buy a piece of property with a cloud on the deed still? I don't think most of us would, but I am here willing to still put this here in front of you for a vote without the assurance from the parks that this cloud is removed off the deed as far as the deed restrictions on what can be done on the property. There are still some issues that need to be worked out that Parks has not contacted us about. And I don't know how many of you sitting in this audience would move forward with a real estate transaction without having all of your questions answered. But we are still here because it's June 5th and we promised you we would do that. And rather than move it out any farther, here we are. So continue with your motion, Commissioner.
Well, I have a question. And then, yes, I will, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Could it be that they haven't responded because they're waiting for this date and this final right here? If I may read the matter of the resolution, desiring to exchange real property between Oregon Parks and Recreation Department in Curry County. After the last whereas, now therefore the Board of Curry County Commissioners hereby resolves to move forward with the necessary preparations for the real property exchange. I don't know what could be more clear than that. Sending to the state, I'm sure that we'll hear from them very soon. So do you need that in more of a formal motion? Mr.
No. All I'm saying is that Ms. Schmelzer reached out to them and to make sure that we were all on the same page, and they have not gotten back to her. That was the point on that.
So we'll take the lead here and we'll go with that motion.
That's what he's saying.
Okay.
Second that, and I'm going to kind of clarify. Your motion is to approve the land swap, the resolution approving the land swap, right?
I'm going to read the bottom of the resolution here, just 10 words, to move forward with the necessary preparations for the real property exchange. We understand that to mean the state of Oregon. Thank you.
Okay, I'll second that.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold?
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce?
Yes.
Chair Pash?
No.
Motion carried 2-1.
Before everyone leaves, I just want to make a comment on something. I like to give good news every now and then. Roadmaster, I just want to let you know that I got a comment from a citizen the other day, Lance Brown, commenting on your crew and what a great job you guys did out there repairing a problem that he had. And he just wanted to let me know that, and I want to let everyone else know that your job well done, sir. So, all right, we're going to move on to 5B, Elk River Campground Partnership. Mr. Hopkins.
Josh Hopkins, Curry County Parks Director. Good morning. So in April of 2019, we had a workshop on a possible partnership with the U.S. Forest Service where the county would assume management of 3 campgrounds up the Elk River, Sunshine Bar, Butler Bar, and Laird Lake. This would have been done with a 20-year special use permit. Doing the 20-year special use permit allows us to get RV license fee monies and other monies along those lines, some of those federal pass-through dollars that the state had talked about earlier. After discussing the possibility, the board requested a budget to be developed so that you guys could review it before we move forward with the project. So that's what we're here to discuss at this point. Just going over the budget in general, that should be in front of everyone's packet right now. As far as implementation costs for taking over and starting to run this campground, it's not very much because we don't have to build facilities. We don't have to build new roads. We don't have to build a lot of this stuff. Additionally, one thing that's really keeping the cost down is the Forest Service, since with a 20-year special use permit, they still own the property, is able to let us take some of their own materials that they currently have other places and reuse them. For example, 3 Iron Rangers are going to be needed to collect the fees and everything like that. We're going to be able to remove those from other places that are already closed down and no longer fees. Those cost about $900 a piece, so that's a huge savings to the county. The fee envelope holders, another thing that the forestry has that we can actually just use and promote right over. And so basically for implementation, we're looking at getting new signs to explain how to use the day use fees and everything like that. I reached out to a couple of sign companies and got pretty much an average on how much those signs would cost to be made. It was $180. Then we'll need janitorial supplies. To start off, we really don't need that much, just basically a box of toilet paper and some general cleaning supplies, a lot of which we already have. But so as far as implementation costs go, we've got $373 approximately. Of that, there is the possibility we may need to rent a tractor to remove these fee boxes. There's several options of borrowing them in the county that I've been looking at. It kind of just comes down to timing. Depending on when we're going to be looking to do this might affect the timing. So if we're able to borrow them, it's about $373 to just get this up and going. Then we can start charging fees, start running the campgrounds and everything like that. Additional costs for the first year would be reestablishing the well at Butler Bar. Once we reestablish the well at Butler Bar, we'd be able to get the state license fees for them at our next reporting cycle, which will be spring of 2020. The well's in place, the head's in place. They removed the handle from the well back in, I think, 2005. With any luck, we can pop the handle back on, get it primed back up, and do a few special samples through our labs in the health department and be up and going with that. And that would kick in the RV license fee revenue for Butler Bar. As far as yearly expenditures for how much we expect it to cost, our main total cost is going to be septic pumps. There are 5 vaulted pit toilets along this route. To get them all pumped out, we're looking at about $3,100 a year. That's an approximation. It could change here and there depending on like fuel and everything like that. And then janitorial supplies for the whole year, you know, we're looking at about $180 extra between the toilet paper and the cleaning. So expected yearly, how much we expect it to cost a year is going to be about $3,280. Nice thing about these campgrounds, they don't cost that much to actually maintain. We don't have large amounts of, you know, grass fields that constantly need mowed like Boys Cove or Lobster Creek. There's not as much brush removal or anything like that because we're trying to leave them as wild as we can. You know, you may trim a blackberry vine or any sort of hazard that's coming across the thing, but it's not something that needs that much hands-on maintenance. In your packet, there is an email from Mr. Bob Hemus of the U.S. Forest Service. The reason I included the email was 2 reasons. One, after he reviewed what I put for the expected total of how much it's going to cost to run the campground, he agreed that, you know, that's about what they expected to as well and what they've currently been doing. So that just kind of reaffirms the numbers that I came up with. And the second thing is, and this really goes in what we will be developing, although we don't need to develop a campground as far as facilities and everything like that, we are going to need to develop a user base. Years these campgrounds have been ran not charging anyone to run them. There's been no reports of how much money they could have been generating, limited information on visitor use. So as far as our expected total revenues that we're expecting, we're kind of shooting in the dark, but making an educated guess about where to go. Looking over the recreational corridors targeted revenue, I reached out to the Forest Patrol deputy for the sheriff's office. He mentioned that basically when he goes up there on what he would consider a nice day during the summer, he only sees these campgrounds currently about half full. So using that information I took and I was basically said, well, okay, well, between a general season that you would have, which would be beginning of June to the end of September, if you're half full on like a nice day during the weekend, just kind of used the math out of that and came up with, you know, 272 paid camp nights is what we might be expecting. The deputy did also mention that, you know, in his opinion, he didn't think that we would ever be able to correct enough of the action for the places to really be making a lot of revenue. I did just want to bring that up to the board just because it is something he relayed and you guys need to have the information you need to make these decisions. But there is a lot of possibility of promoting these campgrounds. Next way to kind of get an idea of what we might be able to make is look at comparables. There's the Sixes River Campground, which is located along the Sixes River. It's BLM owned. It's almost the same as these campgrounds. Sixes River has 19 total sites. This recreational corridor has 17 total sites. Sixes River doesn't have water. It's got vaulted toilets. It doesn't have a camp post. The BLM was nice enough to provide the last 2 years average of that. Currently, Sixes River only charges $8 a day. These ones are set to be charging $12 a day. So if we took their average amount and just added the extra 33% over to that, we come out with possibly $3,800 approximately in revenue that could be generated just if it's close to matching that type of average. As far as year one goes, we'd really be just setting a target goal of about 175 camp nights being rented. That'd basically be around On the weekends, it's only half full. That's not taking account anyone camping during the week and everything along those lines. The idea is we're just trying to recoup our cost for the first year, and it's the second year on that we expect after a visitor promotion campaign that we would increase revenues, increase visitorship, and everything like that. A lot of people don't know these campgrounds exist, even people that live in this county. Recently, a member of the Adronomous Fishermen took a group of kids up to Laird Lake to go camping for the night. They caught some fish and everything like that. He'd never been up there before and didn't know it existed. And if we're talking about someone that's on the Adronomous fishing, not knowing there's a great spot to take your kids fishing, that's something that we can definitely tap into as far as a market. In the email from Mr. Hemus, we have other things that are going on too. The Elk River is a scenic biking corridor. That corridor is on a map listed in your packet. With that scenic biking corridor destination, Travel Oregon's promoting a lot of this corridor. So we'd be able to partner up with them to get more promotion into this area. Additionally, last year they did a biking event in the area where the turnaround was at Butler Bar. They're doing the permit again to do the exact same thing. So we're talking about an option of getting involved and helping promote an event that should be something that takes hold and becomes a yearly event to draw people to that area. And as people go to that area and they see that it's cleaned up, it's not full of vagrants or anything else like that, the trash is off the ground, and especially if there's water available at Butler Bar, that's going to make it more desirable for them to come back. In the thing, he also mentioned several other permits they're kind of working on. There's a dive permit option where one of the local tourism guides is planning to take people up to these campgrounds to go diving down into the deep holes in the river and everything like that. So really, I'm just trying to explain to the board that although we don't know how much these can make, there is a lot of potential moving forward. With revenue that I do know and can estimate, I can say that once we get the Butler Bar campground, which has 7 sites well reestablished, the state RV license fees will kick in. You got to keep in mind anything we develop in the parks affects 2 GL lines for revenue. One would be our state license fee, and the other one is how much occupancy fee they make. So with those in place, for Butler Bar, I'd be expecting $4,900 to $7,000 a year extra from the state RV license fees, simply because it runs an average of the thing. They pay us basically by campsite plus, what's that called, population. And the average generally comes out between $700 to $1,000 per campsite for our county. And that varies by year. But with that in place, the state RV license fee will offset the cost of running all the campgrounds, even with just that one. I would, in the future, look into adding more water into the other campgrounds, and there's different funding that we could draw from to do that, but it's nothing we need to do at this point. So that's basically what I've got for you guys. In the maps, Commissioner Posh, at one of the management meetings, you mentioned wanting some variation of idea how far these campgrounds are actually out there. Sunshine Bar from the 101 is approximately 15 miles. Butler Bar is approximately 19 miles, and Laird Lake's approximately 24 miles from the 101 right there. Another thing as far as visitor promotion goes, there's not that much in the way of signage heading up there. At the fish hatchery, I think is where the county maintained road stops. There's no sign saying Butler Bar 4 more miles or anything like that. Adding those signs would be huge in getting more traffic up into that area, and especially for Laird Lake, you have to take the turnoff right before Butler Bar to go up the rest of the extra 5 miles to get to Laird Lake, and there's no sign there. I know some people that have tried to make it up there and they hit the wrong turnoff, or they don't realize they've got 5 miles to go, and they're driving for 15 minutes and think, oh, we must have missed it, but driving on a forestry road 15 minutes isn't going to get you 5 miles type of a thing. So there's a lot that can be done that's really not that big of an investment, whether it's signage, partnering with these people and other organizations to promote this area and get more people up there. So at this point, Bob Hemus with the Forest Service is here if you guys have any questions of him. But if the board feels like
Either one of you need to ride up with him sometime, but have 2 seatbelts on. It's like riding with one of my sons. He drives pretty fast, but he sure gets you there. would you mind bringing Bob Hemus up? I mean, we're lucky to have Bob in our community. And I didn't know, I want to have the two of you standing together, and eventually the picture's going to be Oregon Parks and Recreation on the right, left, and BLM, the four of you for the picture. And I mean, 10 years ago, a lot of people would have thought they would never see this. So Bob, I just really want to, as resource manager for the Gold Beach Ranger District and your longtime involvement with Rogue River Siskiyou National Forest, much appreciated the work you're doing and the help you're giving us on this and the excellent insight. Thank you.
Thanks.
I do have one more question for
sorry.
Mr. No, she can go and then I'll ask.
I just want to say I had a number of questions as you were going through your presentation, and you answered every one of them. As you went through it, I can see that you have spent a lot of time organizing this, researching it, and I really appreciate it. And I don't know whether it's time for a motion to move forward, but
Commissioner Boyce had another.
Can I make a correction? He's not from BLM, he's from the U.S. Forest Service.
No, I didn't say BLM, did I?
Yeah, you did.
Well, I was getting to them. I mean, they'll be here next meeting. Thank you, Bob.
Do you have another
Thanks for the
question?
correction, Sheriff.
Did you have another
Just
question?
one on the visitor promotion campaign. You're running that by your Parks Advisory, Greer County Committee? And perhaps a budget for us, hopefully at some point, that we can help you with.
Yeah, so virtually any of this stuff will be ran through our Parks Committee. They're going to have say in what gets promoted, how it gets promoted. That's their ideas that they make advisories to the board, to us, to everything like that. And they're a citizens group that represents the county, so they're very important for us when we're making these decisions. One of our members actually is from the North County region. She goes up to these things. She's a part of the Mountain Biking Association and everything like that. So, you know, their input's very valuable. So when we get to the idea of doing visitor promotion campaign, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of players and everything like that involved. It's definitely something that they're going to have input on and everything like that.
It is absolutely gorgeous up there. And then one public testimony, I think the person from Brookings, and forgive me if I'm incorrect, and mentioned we need to look at Social Security bar, and I know you've spent a lot of time on that. I did with Jay Trost some time back, so good work on that too, so the public knows that we are being proactive and we see the opportunities out there, and we're going to be relying a lot on the Forest Service and Oregon State Parks to help us and vice versa throughout this whole thing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Gold, you had a motion?
I move that we move forward with the Elk River Campground Partnership and advise staff to do what's necessary to do that.
Second, Chair Pash.
Any further comments? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold,
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce,
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
At this point, we're going to take a 10-minute recess as we need to for JJ, so we will resume at 10:13. Back into session, it's 10:15 on June 5th. Back on our agenda, discussion action items, number 5C. Ms. Schmelzer?
Yes, the voters approved this May transit lodging tax for the unincorporated areas of the county. And the ordinances that accompanied that had specified that there had to be a tax collector, somebody that would actually go out and collect that tax. I spoke with county council, and there is no one at the current time that was appointed or considered for that when we were adopting the ordinance. So we're at the point now where we actually have to assign that person who's going to be responsible for getting that, collecting that tax. The League of Oregon Cities has examples of the forms that we can use. And then, like I said, it's does your treasurer collect it? Do you hire someone to collect it? Or how does that go about being collected? So that's a discussion and a decision we have to make, because we're supposed to start collecting this tax in September. So we need to have time to mail to all of the businesses that this is going to be, that are going to be affected, the information, the forms. They have to know who to mail it back to, etc. So we have to have that discussion. I have invited Amy Gaddis, who works for the county, but she used to work for JOTS, and she's quite familiar with the collection process and, you know, the amount of time it takes, etc. And speaking with Amy, she had estimated that it would take maybe about 20 hours a month to actually do the collection on that tax, but we don't know until we really get into it. So basically, we're here for the discussion of who's going to collect that tax, and then Amy is here in case we have questions from the user's standpoint. How does that work, or would they prefer it this way or that way? But right now, it comes down to who collects the tax. I did talk with Jim Colin, the assessor, about possibly his staff collecting, and they're not able to due to their workload. So we have to look at, do we hire someone to do this? Does the treasurer do it? Or does some other body actually collect this tax for us?
And that's something you and I have spoken with briefly about. Firstly, again, really good job on a timely thing here. I think the board, first thing I'd like to say to the board is that it's June. So we've got to move pretty expediently on this. So I think a continued conversation on this, and for whatever it takes, we need to try and get this done in either today or in the coming weeks for sure. It would be my thought, and this is just my thought after speaking with Ms. Schmelzer, the burden to our treasurer to oversee it, I think, could be done. I think we're going to find out that this is probably going to take more than 20 hours a month, because you're going to have people that maybe have failed to report. So you're going to be chasing those kind of things for a certain amount of time. So I would probably lean to, because the county's been so stripped down of help, a lot of the departments in the county don't have the physical resources to do this, that we at least start a conversation about possibly hiring someone to do not only this, but we're also going to be doing a business license and collection of the business licenses, maybe kept right in the BOC office somewhere in a small office there, and overseen either by Ms. Schmelzer or by our treasurer to have them oversee it as a management standpoint might be a good approach. That's just my thoughts. Commissioner Gold?
Do we have a list of places that we're going to have to send bills out to?
Yes and no. Yes and no. So what I did was I worked with public health, and I got the list that they use for regulation. So I actually had staff begin to put together the list of, the envelopes for it. We have the list from public health, and then we are able to get some of that information from the state as well. So we'll be merging that data, to get rid of the duplicates. We'll also be looking online to see if there's some out there that are not on those lists that should be on those lists.
Okay, one thing I have, Julie, is if we get 5%, the county gets 5% for administrative fees, and I know we want to give some of that to the businesses for their doing the work to do the paperwork on this and get it sent in. Is there enough left in that? Have you looked into that yet for partially paying for someone if we hire someone?
Yeah, I don't, I'll be honest with you, I don't know if there is enough to fund a position. I haven't gone that far into the weeds. However, that money that we collect gets to be used for tourism purposes. So if that person is also doing promotions, website maintenance, et cetera, that could help offset some of that as well.
Ms. Gaddis, thanks for coming here today. I'd firstly like to take a moment to thank you for taking your personal time here.
You're welcome.
And your family issues that you're having, you're in our prayers.
Thank you very, very much.
Thanks for coming.
I just want to say, as far as billing, this isn't something you would send a monthly bill to. This is, when I worked at JOTS, and I was there for 26 years before I came to the county, which I thank Curry County for everything that they do for me. This is a bill that that is due by the 10th of each month. If it is not paid by the 10th of the month, there are penalties incurred. So it's not something that you send out to the business each month for a bill. You would send them a form, and they would make copies of it. You instruct them, this is your form for fiscal year 1920. Make 12 copies. It is due by this date. If not, there will be penalties incurred. I talked to Julie about this a little bit. We haven't had deep conversations, but then when the city used to come in and audit. They would pick 3 a year, they come in and audit. It's very easy on the businesses. It's as easy as taking your total revenue for the month, you subtract out federal employees that didn't pay tax, you put that on the form. The form, I don't know if Julie's had a chance to give you forms yet. It's very basic. It's a multiplication. We literally took the city and state forms, put it into our Excel spreadsheet. I built a spreadsheet for JOTS. We took the numbers out of QuickBooks, put them in the spreadsheet. It totaled out everything for us. We wrote the check at the end of the month.
Council Huddle?
I was involved in an organization that collected DLTs. We actually just requested that our collectors, the hoteliers and innkeepers, would simply submit. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. I was at a jurisdiction that administered TLTs, and we simply asked the hoteliers and innkeepers to submit their state form to us, and we used the same calculations and the same exemptions in the state. We just said your state return's good enough for us, and then you just calculate the percentage for us
exactly.
there. So
They're already paying tax to somebody. They're paying either to the state or the city, and everybody pays the state tax. Like, that is a mandated state lodging tax. So they're already doing a form. It's as easy as taking the percentage they're paying the state and using the same revenue amount to figure the percentage for the county. So don't think that it's a lot of extra work on the businesses, because they're already doing it. And as far as like an employee having to bill them each month, you send them the form, and we, towards the last couple of years, the state actually had a form on their website, which the county could have a PDF on the website that says, go to the website, download your form. It's that easy. It seems like a lot, and it is a big deal, and we do need this TLT money. But as far as implementing it, I think that it's a lot smaller once it gets started. I think after you get the list and know exactly who's going to pay, and it is their responsibility to register with you or be penalized.
And I think that's something that is important for this board, is to make this form, like you say, if you can just CC and copy this form, where it's something they're already filling out, they're just having to add a number on another line of that form. It takes the burden off business owners. It's much more palatable for a business owner. So, Commissioner Gold?
A couple of questions. First one, would you recommend having an administrative fee going to the innkeepers and hoteliers, or?
I believe, and I have to admit, I haven't had a chance to read through the whole TLT due to the fact of my personal issues that are going on right now. I believe there is an administrative fee that you guys already figured in. The city and the state, I believe it was 0.05. That stays with the business to cover their employee costs for that. So there is something in your TLT already that is designated, and I don't know exactly what that is. I'm sorry.
And how you're describing it doesn't sound like it's going to be a huge deal for anybody once it's set up.
Well, and they're already doing it. Anybody, any VRBO, Airbnb, hotel, RV, I hate to say it, if you're renting a mother-in-law's quarter at your house, you're supposed to be paying this. If it is a less than a 30-day rental and you're collecting rent on it, if you're renting an RV pad in your yard, you should be paying into this. So these people are already, and the state has the power more than our county does to hire somebody to search the VRBOs, the Airbnbs, Facebook, Craigslist of these randoms that are renting 3 RV spaces or 2 guest houses.
Okay.
So we could get the information from the state,
Travel
it
Oregon,
sounds like.
I've actually talked to Julie about this. She's got a lot that she's already put together, and I'm reaching out to some friends at Travel Oregon to see if we can get some information from them as well.
Thank you. Sounds like you know a lot. I appreciate it.
I was in tourism for a long time.
Thanks. Julie, so if we were to come up with, let's say, to bring someone in to help with the collection of this, or to oversee the collection of it, with, let's say, our treasurer as the overseer of that, could we look at and this is, again, we're not making a decision right now, this is just more of a question, could we look at bringing someone in that would not only be the person that, collects the TLT, makes and oversees it to make sure everyone has been timely notified of, their registering and all that for it. And also, if we're going to do the business license thing, we could coordinate those two together
Absolutely.
and come up with some kind of a pay scale for the board on what that would look like. And again, I think having someone else in the office that if they're working on the website or whatever and maybe helping you do some filing or something for some of the things that you do to take a little bit of that workload off of you as well might be very beneficial to the county.
We can look at that, yes.
Okay. Commissioner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just assumed this would be a new position, so we would need to formulate a job description. I believe that's a decision we can make today.
That's where we're at. That's what I was asking her to do, yes.
Okay, clarification, good. Thanks for the preliminary. I know you don't have the answer to all the questions, neither of you, and that's totally understandable, but you've done a lot of preliminary work here that's going to, we're not intimidated, I don't think, by the urgency of this, but it's been a big win for the county and the fair and the visitor promotion, citizens, so good work. So, yeah, the job description I think would be first.
Commissioner Gold?
Okay, I'm looking overall, and I can see an initial letter going out telling people that they're going to have to do this on a monthly basis, get the form on the website, and so forth. I don't know about having to hire a full-time person to do it.
Exactly. I'm not sure we need a full-time. That's why I'm saying, Ms.
Yeah, maybe you could just
look into
investigate it, yeah.
But I firmly believe this is going to be more than 20 or 25 hours a month, especially in the initiation of it, because there's going to be so much to do in the beginning. But we're also going to, if we incorporate the business license filings and collection of that into it as well, it could turn into, I believe, probably maybe a 40 or 60 hour a month position and not a 20 or 25. Commissioner Boyce?
Yeah, I just assumed, I'd be shocked if it isn't a full-time position. I think if we nibble around the edges early on, we might be sorry in that, in the overall approach on setting this thing up properly. And back to your discussion with Mr. Barnes, yeah, this is a business management decision. We need to really be on our toes here, my opinion. We're getting that headed that direction. Thank you.
I'm going to jump in, and just before your room fills with a bunch of people that have to pay it, confidentiality is a huge thing as far as the businesses, and I'm going back to my hotelier days. You're asking people to disclose to you exactly how much they're making per month, so you want that person. I know that the city, it is one person. It used to be Candy Kronberger, and I believe now Jody does it herself, so that it's not everybody in the office aware of what each business is making.
Exactly.
So before your room fills with people saying, I don't want my information distributed to a whole office or, just
public.
to
That's
the public.
that's
so
why
I'm
I
just
was-
tossing that out there so that Julie and I talked about it, but so that you guys are aware also. I just going to save you that little.
And that's why I thought if we had one person doing it and then the treasurer just checking the numbers to make sure everything is in line, the collections were done properly, all the money's where it's supposed to be on time, because that way there won't burden her. Just basically an afternoon of checking once a month probably is what it would be. Mr. Barnes?
I just have a quick question. I know that the state now is collecting our marijuana tax for us and submitting that to us. Since the state is already collecting a TLT tax on people, have you thought about having them collect it and just adding it to their bill and sending it to us? We wouldn't need an extra person that way, I wouldn't think, and you're still having it audited by your treasurer once a month.
We have spoken about that. I've spoken to Ms. Schmelzer about that, and actually she'd like to comment, so go ahead.
Sure. Actually, when they passed the ordinance, I think the understanding was, or the thought was, that the state would pass that or collect that, but the state doesn't, although they collect the marijuana tax, they will not collect the lodging tax. There was a bill introduced about 2 years ago to do that. It has not passed. The state is going to continue to try and work towards that, but as of right now, we're on our own with it. The state won't collect it.
Okay.
Plus, we'll be incorporating hopefully a business license tax into that position as well. So
Okay.
we need somebody that like Ms. Gladys was just saying, that will keep that confidentiality
Right.
intact in this county so that everyone knows that their private business is their private business.
Okay, thank you.
So do we have a motion?
Discussion first. Go ahead. Is there anything else related to this that responsibilities we have that we should be aware of that's on your radar, maybe has you concerned?
Not offhand. I just think, I am a little concerned because we've had people asking already, where are the forms? What do I have to do? I mean, people want to comply. And, fortunately, from the time the clerk, at the end of an election, there's a time before they actually certify the results. So we have that very short window of time to get our ducks in a row. But we need to get somebody trained and get this going fairly soon.
Okay, so I move that we move forward with getting tax collection administrator for the county and have Ms. Schmelzer get the details for us in the future so we can actually have an action item.
And could I also ask to add to that a pay scale as well?
Yeah, that would be part of the...
Yes.
Implementing order number 19-02. Second, Mr. Chair.
Any further discussion? Roll, please.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
I just want to make a comment that the citizens out there that we are taking this very seriously. We don't want to burden you, and we will. This commissioner will promise that your information will stay private. So, all right, moving on to D, ordinance amending the marijuana tax revenue ordinance.
Thanks, Ms. Gaddis. Appreciate it very much. Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so
Okay, moving on to D, ordinance amending the marijuana tax revenue ordinance 1604, Ms. Schmelzer.
Yes, back in 2016, the county adopted an ordinance imposing a 3% tax on the retail sales of marijuana items in the unincorporated areas of the county. And that at that time, we could decide where that money goes to. And at that time, the board decided to put it all into the general fund. My recommendation is that the ordinance be amended so that that money goes into the law enforcement fund.
And, excuse me,
Commissioner Boyce?
Why are we doing that?
Okay. So our sheriff's office has, as you know, has had difficulty. The public has not supported a levy to increase dollars to get him the money he needs to operate and have full coverage. He does want to pay dues to an organization, SINT, which is South Coast Narcotics Team, which we have not been able to give money to.
Yes.
He's looking at having a K-9 unit as well. But basically, the problem has the drug problem is escalating. We're not saying that's marijuana, we're just saying drugs in general. And the state has taken their 17%, and they said, we're going to take this 17%, we're going to give so much to law enforcement, so much to schools, so much to mental health. But the individual sheriffs themselves have not seen any of that money come through because that's going through to state resources. So then we have to look at the local
Greatly
dollars.
increase their workload.
It has greatly increased their workload. So we're looking at saying, how can we, since the sheriff is not getting that part of that 17% directly, how can he get some money to do the job he needs to do, which is to look at crime associated with either marijuana or some other criminal activities there. So we did pass, like I said, we did pass the 3%. We collect that quarterly, and that could be given to the sheriff. Right now, it's just going into the general fund, and it's not designated towards any specific budget line, other than general fund.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Further
Well said,
discussion?
Director Schmelzer. Thank you.
Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Aye.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
I have a question on this. Council, because this is an ordinance, does this now have to be scheduled for a second reading, first reading?
Let me take a look, but I think we gave the option to have this be an emergency ordinance. Let's see what the ordinance itself says.
While you're looking, I want to make a comment on something. I spoke with one of the deputies last night for the Sheriff's Department, and I didn't confirm with our sheriff this morning, but I was told last night that our Sheriff's Department has secured the funds for the first dog, and that will be coming in very soon.
Donation?
I believe most of it was donation, yes.
This was not prepared as an emergency ordinance, so it needs to come back for a second reading.
You may want to confirm that with the sheriff if you want.
Okay, so we'll bring a second reading at the next, as soon as we can. There's a certain timeline in between readings we have.
All righty. E will be requesting commissioner approval to replace the Morrill Bridge at milepost 8.9 on Forest Creek. Yes.
We have one question from the audience here.
Sorry? Yes, sir.
You have to approach the microphone.
Microphone, yes.
Julie, got any kind of a dollar figure of how much that might be for the sheriff's department over a certain amount of time or something like that? Just a little hard nugget.
I'm just going to give a wild guess, no details, $100,000 a year. A year.
Annually,
yeah. May I? But that's not going to be additional over and above the sheriff's budget necessarily. It's just going to take it from the general fund, which would take pressure off.
Well, so this coming year, as that money comes in, it will not be deposited into the general fund. It will be going into the sheriff's fund.
So it is additional funds over and above the budget?
It will not go into the budget this year. So the budget will not see that money. Instead, it will go directly into the sheriff's office.
But his budget's already set, so that'll just go into his.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
And
For his budget, it's an increase. And I apologize, I can't give you a specific numbers. We are sworn to a secrecy clause, so we can speak in a roundabouts and things of that nature. But it's about $100,000 that he would see in his budget.
Council Huddle?
Good, thank you. My understanding is the Board of Commissioners has not actually adopted any budget yet.
Right.
So nobody's budget is quote-unquote set, and then, so whether the board wants to, it would be hard to make this an increase to the sheriff's budget because we're taking it out of the general fund, which funds the sheriff's budget. We're essentially, so if we reduce the general fund, we'd have to reduce somebody's funding if we did that. I think it's the sheriff's budget staying the same. This is more or less, instead of each year the budget committee deciding what amount comes out of the general fund, this will be earmarked so that when it comes in, it will have the same amount of money to give to the sheriff, but this will just be included in the mix predetermined versus.
That answered my question,
okay.
too. Thank you.
Thanks. Yep.
All right, so we're moving on now to E, requesting commissioner approval to replace the Morrill Bridge at milepost 8.9 on Flores Creek Road. Mr. Christensen.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Richard Christensen, Curry County Roadmaster. Sorry, I got hay fever real bad and I'm on some medication right now. But anyways, sorry about that. This is a bridge that's pretty much made going across Flores Creek that has like two large fir tree logs. It's an old logging bridge that belongs to Curry County Road Department. It's at the very end of our county maintained road. And currently it's under load restrictions where fully loaded log trucks cannot go over it. And in 2016, the Curry County Road Department applied for STIP funding and it was awarded this year or last year, and to replace this old bridge with a new bridge for about $2.4 million. The attached agreement is for your signature to allow for this agreement to move forward, where the Curry County Road Department will manage this project and allow like myself to work on the right-of-way easements and our staff to manage the project, and so it'll pay part of our wages. Also, we'll be picking who the project engineer will be to replace this bridge. So I have it in our budget $200,000 this year for this budget. We won't need that full amount this year because this will be a 2-year project. This year will be the engineering after the agreement is signed. In the following year, following summer, will be the construction.
How far up is that? I see the language.
9 miles.
101.
Yes, it's 8.9 miles up.
8.9 miles. Oh, that's from the 101 then. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Commissioner Boyce?
Have you measured the traffic on that? I'm sure you have.
I don't have the traffic counts.
But it's not very much, right?
Not very much. I
But it's-
understand there's like 2 fully loaded log trucks that cross that bridge a day
On the average.
on the average.
And you're also almost doubling the length of the bridge, is that?
No, it's increasing
A third,
it from
maybe.
84 feet to 120 feet.
Thank you, okay.
One more question I have, Mr. Christensen. In your comments, you stated that you're going to need to work on the easements. Is the county going to need to look to condemn any properties or purchase any property for those easements?
No, I'm going to work with adjacent property owners to try to obtain no-cost temporary construction easements. So that way we can realign. Well, there may be a permanent easement for a small realignment, but there needs to be temporary construction easements for the adjacent work and staging of equipment.
Okay. Commissioner Gold?
Do you foresee any problems with negotiating with these property owners? Would it be in their benefit to have the bridge, I would assume?
It would be in their total benefit. I
Okay,
don't foresee
okay.
any issues.
Before we start construction, could we have your assurances on that from property owners saying, I mean, I don't know if we want to amend a deed or anything, but at least something in writing from property owners saying that, they give your permission to temporarily, whatever we need to do for ingress and egress to build this bridge.
Absolutely. This first year, I would take care of all the easements with the engineering.
Okay. Commissioner Boyce?
Wait a minute, which side of the property owners that you're negotiating, which side of the bridge are they on?
They're on the far side.
Okay. I would think it would go pretty easy then.
Yes.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
I move that we move forward with the replacement of the Morrill Bridge at milepost 8.9 on Flores Creek Road
Is that, signature authority to the chair?
with signature authority to the chair.
Have a second?
Second, Mr. Chair.
Further comments? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
That's a lot of money. Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Okay, we're going to, next for discussion will be J from the consent agenda. And this is the adoption of the new personnel rules. And I'm guessing this is probably just somehow it failed to get in there, but we had spoken about, and I thought there were...
Were there 2 items from the Roadmaster, the sweep purchase as well?
Yeah.
There's on the back.
Oh, okay, I thought he was back-to-back. I apologize, Mr. Chair.
Well, yeah, I just put it at the bottom of my page. I guess we could, Mr. Christensen, let's go
Yeah,
ahead.
let's
finish you out so we can go, so that you can go.
Thank you.
Sorry. So we're going to do F, authorization Roadmaster to purchase a 2018 Superior DT74J mid-mounted broom for $63K.
Thank you. Yes, this equipment for the last 3 years has costed us approximately $30,000 in its repair and maintenance. And the current equipment we have needs about $4,000 worth of work to put it back in service. And it would be a complete waste of money to keep putting money in this, our old sweeper. And this new equipment would replace a 2009 pool sweeper, and this one would be more like a car-type sweeper. And we envision it will be towed behind one of our 1-ton pickup trucks to our job sites. It would allow us to be more effective and efficient with our work because the old one's breaking down all the time. And it's it would save us money in future maintenance and repairs. Like I said, we spent $30,000 in the last 3 years, which is half the purchase of this equipment.
So let me ask you this, if you were to be able to purchase the new one, could we resell the old one to someone else?
I think I would absolutely do that, but I think it would be for parts. It's pretty.
It's not bad.
If you put $30,000 into it, though, wouldn't that bring a lot of those parts would be brand new.
No, you'd have to see it. It's been through a lot.
Commissioner Gold.
Have you had downtime because of this and losing money on your labor costs because of this, the downtime with the sweeper?
Absolutely. Yeah, the downtime really affects us being able to complete our work programs, but also if we're mobilized out to the far reaches of the county, we mobilize out maybe 2 hours to the end of Flores.
So the 30,000 is just the parts, it's not the downtime?
30,000 is just what it's cost to maintain that piece of equipment the last 3 years.
Right, okay, so it makes sense to move on with this. I'd like to make a motion that we authorize the roadmaster to purchase the new 2018 Superior DT 74J mid-mounted broom with HGAC cooperative purchasing discount at $63K.
Second?
Second, Mr. Chair.
Any further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Aye.
Chair Pash.
Aye. And I would
Motion
also hope, like you said, you would
carries.
move forward to sell the old one.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. All right, well, let's go back to the personnel issue from Jay from the consent agenda, because I see Julie's just stepped in. And all I wanted to talk about on this was in the personnel rules that we have here. I'd like to see a background check done on every employee that gets hired henceforth. I think it's in the county's best interest to do that. It's further insurance and protection for the county, its employees, and the constituents all in one. So I'd like to make that as part of our personnel rules.
So what's the cost on that?
I do background investigations on anyone associated with my foundation, and it's about $35 each for a full investigation on them. You can go, if you want to go top level, Mr. Barnes may know more about that than I do, but I'm going to guess it's probably nearer to $100 range for the full scope, top stuff. But I think for the county's requirements, are we hiring a sex offender? Are we hiring, different people that have had crimes in their past, those kind of things? The $35 background check would be about the national average on that.
If that's the route the board wants to go, Julie can make an amendment and we can bring it back at the next meeting.
So I think it's a very good idea, and I think it's simple investment. Do you want to give a little more specific on the language you want her to include, or just report back to you probably?
As a prerequisite to your hiring, you have to submit to a background check, that's all.
So, this is Julie Swift, payroll and HR. Do you want that on every employee, regular employees, irregular employees, part-time employees?
I think anyone that can have physical and or audible contact with the public, that creates a liability for the county. So, Council Huddle?
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Here goes the yellow flag.
Well, I'm just looking in your packet on page 34 of this item. I know this was a 132-page item alone in your I think in your packet, or else this is on page 34 of your 132-page packet. I think it's page 34. Let me just see how this works. No, it's on this item, so 4J, and if you go to page 34, I'm actually looking at the text because I was kind of trying to ask the question to Julie Swift, don't we already do this? But Article 13 is appointments, and then on page 34, because my question to Julie, I thought we already did this on everyone, evaluation of applicants, and it says, prior to being offered county positions, each prospective employee must meet the following contingencies, undergo a background check. This should be, and in the in the rules, it's page 32 of the rules. It's Rule 33, or 13E, and 4A. But I already thought we did this, so that's where, and then we do a drug screen on sensitive.
Safety sensitive.
Yeah. So I'm hoping your concerns are addressed by our rules and.
Well, I think the language, the language in there is a little bit vague. Maybe we could expound a little bit on that, but I'd like to make sure that it's actually being done.
And I think what we've looked at that background check in that article is just doing reference checks in the past.
Not criminal.
Right, and when we used to have mental health in the county, of course, they had to undergo a background check to be able to work with that clientele. The reason I asked about all employees is because the fair hires temporary employees that may only be here 3 or 4 days to work the fair. We have juveniles that work at the parks for the summer. So is it everybody or?
That's something I didn't chew on, I guess.
I don't see a reason why not to do a criminal background check or a background check on the fair worker. They're around families, children, all kinds of things. So
I think and I hate to bring up again what I do, but anyone at my place, and I won't mention the place, but anyone at my place that could somehow be alone with a child, or get out of view of our cameras with a child, and it could compromise that child or compromise what I do, has to undergo a background check. If it's a greeter that's in front of 100 people, we don't. But if it's anyone that could walk away with a child and be alone with that child, it's just a liability that I think the county should not put themselves in peril of.
Are any of those temporary fair workers cash handlers?
No.
Okay.
And I know some organizations, what they do is they charge an employee when they hire them $25, and I'm just saying a number, $25 for a background check. If you're honest on your background check and your application, then that business covers the money. If you've lied on it, then you have to pay for it. In other words, they make them put up the money first.
And on the application, we can no longer ask if someone's been convicted of a crime.
What I've seen happen is, right, you cannot consider a criminal history in a employment offer, but usually the way it works is you make the offer, and in your offer letter you say, this offer is subject to you passing a background check. So you've made your decision to hire contingent upon a successful background check, and that's how you can satisfy your safety, but not pre-discriminate and prejudge people on their criminal records.
Well, I think we all agree our world is changing, and we need to protect not only the employees of the county. Sometimes I leave here and I see 3 women alone in this building, and it just really bothers me. That's why we voted a short time ago to put cameras in this building. I think anyone that should and has the ability to be alone with somebody has to have a background check. That's just for the little bit it would cost us to do it. I would sure hate to see something happen and we live with that for the rest of our lives.
Let's make it for everyone, Mr. Chair, would be my preference.
Amen.
Okay.
I don't know about the part-timers, though.
And
Well,
when they're
especially
only here for a week or two,
Yeah, I think maybe we could see what other counties do and whether they do volunteers, part-timers, et cetera, and try and formulate something similar and bring it back for a discussion. Yeah, I'd rather research it first.
Question, would it be the main impetus behind a lot of these changes? This is the changes that remove any mention of a county administrator and replace those functions as we've done through the hiring of the director of operations, and then revert some of the functions back to the board that were previously done by the county administrator. So the idea of the background check doesn't deal with the changes that are proposed. Would it be possible to adopt these rules and then direct us to bring back a single change with that? In other words, this will help us operate under the Director of County Operations form of government that we have. I see that as a see where I'm saying? We can bring you back after we do the research Julie Schmelzer's talking about with the change you're talking about. Do you see where I'm going with that, Julie? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so basically adopt as is what we have before us and come back within
One change.
2 weeks or
after
something
we-
with a background check information. Yep.
Well, something else may come up. It's easy to amend if it's necessary.
Okay.
So I'll move.
I just, for $25 or $30, whatever it costs, I mean, I certainly wouldn't want somebody that's only working 3 days. One of those moments in that 3 days, he took a little kid out behind a tent and did something horrible to him. I'm sorry, it's just not worth the $30 to me.
So, again, those are your options. Either approve as we have now and handle the background check as a single item, or just continue until we bring it back with the background check item.
My motion is to adopt the rules. Of course, I read all 134 pages 3 times. To adopt the rules as is with anticipated amendments over time that we can change. But get this done today if we can, Mr. Chair.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion?
I just have one more thing to say. Just when we created the rules years ago, that was one of the things that was in the order creating them, is that it is a fluid document and changes could be made as needed.
I like that.
Mr. Thode.
Mr. Thode?
Yes, Richard Thode. I just had a comment on the fee. It's not uncommon for some agencies to charge a fee for a background check, and I agree with Commissioner Pash. If you get fingerprinted, you have to pay the sheriff's office in some counties for fingerprinting. So I'm not sure exactly where you're going with this particular ordinance, but I really think that you should look into the fees, because if I want a job, I apply, pay my $25. If I know I can't pass, I'm probably not going to do that. So, and maybe make some where you could get the $25 back if you pass it and you're hired. I'm not sure on the legality of that. And number 2, I just read a huge article on the depleting workforce in the state of Oregon due to the legalization of marijuana. And most employers are requiring drug tests, and they're having a hard time people to get into pass. And their argument to the people they're not hiring, well, it's legal, you created it, why are you doing this to me? So, I mean, that's Pandora's box. You probably don't want to open up. But I really think from a fee standpoint, it makes sense to get some revenue in from that area, even though it's not going to be a lot. And we do need background checks on employees.
Thank you, sir. And that was one of my comments on that was, you know, if you ask them to put the $25 up or whatever the fee is, it'll deter a lot of people that know they're going to have an issue from even applying. So you won't be wasting, you know, staff time on someone that you know they're not going to get the job anyway, and they're just hopeful they'll get through. So on that, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Aye.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
G, order authorizing timber deed quitclaim to Winter Springs LLC. Council Huddle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an item that the assessor and I presented to the Board of Commissioners a little bit ago on these pretty much ancient and more or less obsolete artifact timber deed foreclosures. My research and the assessor's research is that there's very little value to us in these timber deeds. The most likely result is that they've expired and we don't have any interest, and it would be a lot of work to nail that down, particularly with historical deed, you know, track, search, everything back to the time of donation. So really, our recommendation is to just quit claim this to the owner, and then they would pay our fees for the work to get that done.
Quick question, is this one of the properties that we spoke about that the legality of it might even be challenging because of the time?
Correct, exactly. So I can give a little more detail. Prior to, and Jim Cullen is here as well, he can answer any questions that I missed, but prior to 1977, the state of Oregon taxed timber separate from the underlying property, and sometimes the owners of the property would keep their land and they would transfer the rights to the timber to a timber company or something like that. Well, then, if the timber company didn't pay the taxes on the timber, the county would come in and foreclose on the timber. The underlying property owner oftentimes didn't even get notice of the foreclosure of it because it wasn't their property, quote unquote. And so then they don't even find out about that until years later. This particular foreclosure was in 1960. Here it is over 50 years later. And then my research into the, I'll just call it the length or the statute of limitations-ish kind of thing, but a timber rights to a timber deed are said to expire over time if you don't harvest within a reasonable time. In the cases I found, 14 years was found to be a reasonable time, 26 years was found not to be a reasonable time. Here we're 50, almost 60 years. So really, I think we have a notice issue and a reasonable time issue, and I just don't think our chances of prevailing to have any interest in the timber on the property is reasonable, and so therefore, and then Jim had checked with all of his assessor groups. As you know, most of us who are in these county positions, the roadmaster, myself, the assessor, the clerk, all the different groups, the county attorneys, the county assessors, they have listservs amongst themselves, and we check this around with all of our other groups, and for me, including former county council Herbage, and the oldest surviving members of the county council groups, and none of them have ever even heard of this. And Jim, I don't know if you have anything to add about your work with the assessor groups or anything like that, but okay. But really, we found no one to say that these things have value for counties.
We have a motion?
I move that we authorize the timber deed to quitclaim to Winter Springs LLC.
Second?
Second, Mr. Chair.
Any further discussion? Roll, please.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Next, I would like to speak.
The assessor's leaving.
I'd like to speak on H, Justice Court. Looking for revenue sources for our county. I've spoken with some of our people in the county. I've done a little bit of homework on this, as has Ms. Schmelzer, and we are looking into the possibility of doing a justice court here. I think you'll see in your package some of the stuff that was given to you from SOS Oregon and their website. Justice courts are actually pretty easy to put in. Basically, our county council could be a justice court judge. You have to be a member of the bar. I'm not saying that I'm putting your name on the hat for that, sir. I'm just saying you have to be a member of the bar. You don't have to be a judge. So any licensed member of the bar that the Board of Commissioners appoints can be the Justice Court JP, and then they can handle cases, traffic cases. They can handle, I don't know exactly the numbers without running through everything on here, but we can handle small claims courts cases up to $7,500. As some of you may or may not know, I think the county gets, and I'm not going to quote this number, but I think it's around $16 per citation that the Sheriff's Department writes. The rest of it goes to the state. With the Justice Department or a Justice Court, we could maintain, I believe it's 68% of that money would stay here in the county. So we would maintain at a minimum a huge portion of those kind of things. And again, you can expand the what the Justice Court can do through this commission, and everything can be contained in this county. I've spoken with Jerry Herbage about this, who was actually president of the county in the 80s when there was a Justice Court here. And he said at that time it was not profitable because, in his opinion, the way the court was run. I've spoken with a couple of other people. I believe there's 17 or 18 counties in the state right now that have justice courts, and I've spoken with two of them, and they are both profitable. If they're run properly, they can be very profitable. And this is a revenue source for the county that we could depend on and move forward with. Those are comments that I just wanted to make before the board. This is definitely in the very beginning stages of it, but basically what I'm asking this board to do is further look into a justice court and the pluses and minuses to it and possibility of implementing it later this year. Commissioner Gold?
So the individual lawyer or whoever you have, of course, would be paid, I assume?
Yes.
Okay, and then we would have another county employee?
You would have another staff member, yes.
Yeah, and it sounds to me like you have checked as to the profitability
Again,
of other counties, so...
I think you'd find pluses and negatives to both. In a county our size, I think it could be very profitable if it's run properly. I think a lot of counties are what I've heard is they overstaff it. They try and run too many hours. I think in a county this size, probably having a justice court 1 day a week would probably be all that would be required. So you could keep your staffing to a minimum. I understand that there are also regulations on how things are filed with the state on convictions or findings, and that are things that I have not finished yet, and that's why I'm saying this is the beginning phase of it, but it's just something that I wanted to know if this board would have an interest on moving forward with before I expended a lot of resources and time on it. Commissioner Boyce?
Well, the revenue can stay here, it can go to the state. So I think you have a very good idea. The only thing I'm a little sensitive to when the public starts hearing we can be profitable, the poor guy that's out here and went 10 miles an hour over the speed limit and goes, are you kidding, a $300 ticket? Now that's going to go to the county. Those darn commissioners. So just be a little aware of that, the language we choose, I think, can send the wrong message, or at least to a part of our constituency. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
I think, and again, I think the way you began that would be the proper phrasing is, if you're speeding, we can give the money, all of it to the state, or we can keep a larger percentage of it here. So that's the way that we should probably look forward to.
You want us to be a bit regimented on this is something we can do and manage well, and it's an opportunity to show the public that we understand why they put us here.
Commissioner Gold?
I would be looking at contracting out a lawyer service to do this, yeah.
And these are conversations that I'd like to have maybe at a workshop. Let's give me some time to have some more information on this and have a workshop on it.
Yeah, I think if the board is interested in seeing it go further, we could do a workshop on it.
Yeah.
I know there's people out there that are willing to help Commissioner Pash with this idea, so.
That's all I want to do is bring to the board if there's a possibility that you'd want to go through with it, to look forward to it. And I also know that Mr. Thode is out there, and I would like to get his comments on it because he's done some work on this as well.
He gave me a huge file, so I'm going to make sure you get that file. Thanks, Mr. Thode.
Yes, Richard Thode. I did research this quite a bit. Let me start about my career in law enforcement. Started in 1968 in Payette, Idaho for the Payette County Sheriff's Department for $300 a month for 10-hour shifts, 5 days a week. And the sheriff says, whatever you do, don't write any traffic tickets. So I understand that when you talk about elected positions and traffic citations, but I also think when I ended my career in 1977, prior to federal government, I worked motors in Springfield, Oregon for 2 years. And so extensive traffic. We worked traffic areas that related to accidents, and we were able to designate which areas that were high profile. Driving back and forth between here and the California border, you have several of those. And I think it's probably unreasonable to think you're going to get a ticket for 10 over probably, but 15 is not uncommon. I've driven 7 or 8 over and been passed it numerous times. So I think part of the problem might be is that if people think it's going to be generated as revenue, I don't think that's totally correct. I think this is a service to the people in Brookings. If they should be unfortunate enough to get a traffic citation, they won't have to come here to circuit court. They could appear there. Same way with civil disputes as far as tenants, etc. I could go on the deals. I think I looked at probably 7 counties, and I looked at Union County, which is really a small county out of LeGrand, Oregon, and they were able to give $45,000 to the sheriff's office, $35,000 to the district attorney's office. So, and this is a very small county. I had a little trouble reading their budgets to exactly how much they took in, and I wasn't totally sure how much went to the state. So I think a workshop would be good. I think this is not something that is going to cost the county a lot of money. The position of the justice is an elected position with certain restrictions. I think Union County runs 2 days a week with 1 justice and 1 clerk. So, and if a person decides you want to fight a traffic ticket, then you are bumped up to circuit court for trial. So I think it's very good. I would be willing to set in on a workshop with whoever, because there's lots of questions I have, but I don't think it's going to be a big concern of some poor guy getting a ticket for $10, hopefully. I think 15, and I think the big thing will be the sheriffs, because sheriffs traditionally don't like to work traffic because it's an elected position. But if you look around the state of Oregon, Malheur County has a traffic team. Several around LeGrand, Oregon have traffic teams. So there are traffic grants available for safety. So this could be a safety issue as well as the revenue issue and convenience for the people of Brookings.
Thank you, sir. So can I get a motion to, well, I'll make a motion.
Consensus, don't you? Is this not an action item, or is it?
Well, it wasn't actually, it was put on the action items to what I'd like to do is make a motion that we move forward with this, that the board's in recognition and agreement that we at least move forward to a workshop to look further into this.
I'll second that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
All right, getting on to Director's Report, Ms. Schmelzer.
Okay, we do have interviews this afternoon for the 2 finalists for our strategic planning process. So that group will be choosing one to recommend to the board. So hopefully at the next meeting we'll have one selected that we can present to you. I have been working on the business license. The board did see a draft of it, and I did meet with staff yesterday or the day before, and we fine-tuned it. We simplified some things in there, specifically the process or what we're really trying to get out of the license. Make it simpler so more people would be willing to fill out the form. As some of you saw on social media, there was a little buzz about the fact that we didn't raise the flags on Memorial Day. So we've set it up that we're going to make sure that the flags are always raised on the holidays, and we've also went through some extra measures, get some new flags and things of that nature, just to make sure we don't have that omission, I guess, is all I can say. Is I don't think anybody realized that it wasn't being raised. I'm still working on some properties that people want to buy. We have one which you're all familiar with, elderly couple out of the Brookings area who offered a lower price than what the property is appraised at, so I'll be bringing that forward. We also have a person that is interested in buying some property that was given to us by the Department of Transportation for highway purposes. I contacted Rich Christensen. He's not interested in the property, so now I have to go through the process with DOT of having them rescind basically their deed restriction, which says it could only be used for roadway purposes. So just some more work going on with the properties. And then lastly, we did hire a planner downstairs, and she started on the 1st. Her name is Nancy O'Dwyer, so if you get a chance, you might want to stop by and say hi to her. Wish her well. So. Last thing, I'm sorry. And then I had spoken with Commissioner Boyce, and I were discussing the housing problems and discussed the fact about perhaps what we need is an emergency housing declaration. So Commissioner Boyce has asked that I work on that, so I'll be working with him on that and hopefully bring that back to our next board meeting. Basically specifying the fact that we don't have adequate housing, we don't have the land for adequate housing, we don't have the tools needed for housing, and see if it hopefully gets us a little attention from developers or attention from the state to bring in awareness, basically, that we need help and more than just land areas, but also in the tools and the programs that they're giving us. So.
Okay.
All right. My comments are going to kind of further some of Ms. Schmelzer's comments because I've been working with some housing issues here in the county myself and starting to develop some relationships with the incorporated cities. I think some of what we can do to help with our housing issues are to have these relationships and meet with the cities, find out from them what they are willing to do to help us to not only make building on certain properties available, but to expedite them by maybe foregoing some of their SRSs or those kind of things on those properties to expedite it. Another thing that we can look to do to move things forward with building is meet with builders. I know Commissioner Boyce was involved with it as well on a property down in Brookings, the possibility of building a veterans low-income housing, veterans preferred on a 5-acre parcel down there that will now probably not come to fruition, but to be able to hire someone to come in and look at that property that is an experienced builder and already has a footprint of townhomes or condos that they've built that we can overlay onto a template and show a city really greatly expedites some of the building time and like I said, the CRCs or whatever SECs, whatever they're called. So many of those acronyms in my brain. Something else I want to talk about is our broken system for our veterans. And I know that I seem to be one of the larger voices for this, but I attended the meeting last night on Railroad. And I was only there about an hour and a half, and I had to go because it just was. It went from being a meeting from the new group there, trying to explain why they're there, how they got there, and what needs to be done, to a lot of anger and frustration with a lot of people that sacrificed a lot for this nation. And it's frustrating for me, like the guy or dislike the guy. I will say that President Trump is probably one of the most veteran helping presidents in recent memory for me. And he has, with the Mission Act and some of the things that he's done to try and help our veterans and what they deal with, I'm very pleased that he's there. But to watch what happened at this meeting last night, it was pretty disheartening to see people, because people don't realize, it's not only a veteran. It doesn't only affect the veteran, it affects their families as well, the wives, the kids of these men and women, the husbands, these men and women that have give so much voluntarily now. We don't have a draft anymore. They volunteer to do this now. And to see them come home and not have the resources that they need for mental illness, for the physical ailments that they have. I heard a story last night, and this is one of the, I don't want to say the word administrator, but one of the managers of the new facility there. And she was saying, well, let me give you a hypothetical. And I don't mean to belabor the board with this, but so I'll make it short. It was basically a person that was medicated, and there's so much about the opioid crisis now that doctors are under-medicating people for serious issues, and I can understand that. But they said the issue was that there was the new protocols that this facility has is if you complain about your medication levels aren't high enough, you contact this person, and it was one of the nurses, and they have 2 days to answer you. And if that person doesn't answer you within 2 days, then you contact the next person up, which is a nurse practitioner, I believe they said, and they have 3 days to answer you. So now we're at 5 days. And if they don't answer you, then you get to go to the manager. And if that person has up to 21 days to answer you. Now, this is a serious pain issue. The hypothetical they were using was a serious pain issue. Can you imagine going 27 days and not getting your medication up? They could go that long. This is the lack of connection that our federal government still has for our veterans. And it's appalling, and that's why this meeting turned into what it turned into. And
frustration.
I can understand the frustration of these veterans literally dying in pain because it takes up to 21 days to get a hold of the person you need to. I will also say that I applaud Ms. Schmelzer for identifying, starting to identify the properties that this county has available. I would hope that this board would look to any properties that we may have available to convert to veterans housing, low-income housing, that this county, this board would be open to whatever it takes to get that done, donating the property, selling it off to builders, however we can do this to further housing. Some of the conditions that I spoke to some of these veterans last night and what they're living in, to sit and talk to a man that gave 19 years of his life in the Army, living in the back of his pickup truck because he can't afford an apartment in this county. It's just bewildering to me. So that's really all I have. Thank you. Commissioner Boyce?
Well, thank you again, Mr. Chair, and I'm just processing a little bit what you just communicated there. First of all, thanks for getting down to that meeting, and others, thanks for going to the memorial tribute in Brookings and hustling back to Gold Beach. I still don't know how you beat me to the Gold Beach Veterans Memorial Tribute. But your dedication is really showing, and your willingness to build great relationships within the cities and all the above. The last 2 years, that's something I recognize. It's not a insurmountable task, but it is a very important task. And so I think, we go back to January when we decided that under the commissioner's job description, it is totally full-time. And I'm looking over Julie's shoulder here, just her notes. I can't read your notes.
I can't either.
But the load that she's doing and getting done, we could use another one of her. And I'm just going to revert back a little bit to our original considerations and plans for having, just to be able to vote on a strategic plan, even though it's June. That's probably not as soon as or later than we would have liked. But nonetheless, at some point, I think we have to budget for, she mentioned the housing and I don't totally agree that we don't have any available land. That's not what you said, but I mean, we're on the same page as far as it is limited, and we don't get help from the state. And just for the sheer workload we have, we're trying to catch up and completely rebuild the community development department, and there's some wonderful things happening down there that I think is a tribute to your background, Director Schmelzer. I'll be anxious to push all I can on that emergency housing declaration with the friends we have around the state, even some of the adversaries, real or perceived, that we need to deal with, and say, hey, we have got some issues down here. At our housing meeting yesterday, you tuned in while Commissioner Gold was helping with the management meeting. But you saw what it takes to get developers here, to get builders here, to have the incentive for them to say, yeah, I can take and I can build a fourplex here, or I can overcome this planning. We have, thanks to you also, Planning Director Crockett, trying to catch up with the mess that she inherited, that we all inherited. So great kudos there. So when it comes to the veterans, they're right in the middle of this housing issue. And unfortunately, it is not just isolated to Curry County, as we all know. But it is probably, I don't know, I put sudden oak death as maybe the top concern that I have for this county, but housing is a slight lead in that, or equal to, for what it means to Curry County and our citizens. Real quick, I'm going to be in Salem all day tomorrow. I'm leaving real early in the morning for the Governor's Fire Recovery Council. I'll be making a little report there. But I want to address the board and just offer how far things have come in 2 years, slightly less than 2 years. I attended a meeting all day Thursday in Medford. I didn't put anything up on the screen, but basically we had about 60 people there that were represented by ODF and W, all the local fire protection agencies, Dave Larson, Mike Robinson, certainly Merv George, his people. All 5 districts were very well represented, BLM, and they had a simulated 3 fires. I didn't agree with the dates because I think that was a little bit unrealistic, but the concept was, how will we react to these fires? And the first one, again, these are fake concepts. What is it?
Phase.
Yeah. Phase 1, it was in August 28th. Well, I think that's pretty late. That would be nice if we don't have a fire this year till that late. And I'm somewhat predicting we're going to have an easier year. But then one was in the China Bar, which is just, as a crow flies, less than 3 miles from my lodge. Merv George mentioned that, we've only got a third less left of the Kalmiopsis that has not burned in the last 30 years, and most of that, of course, in the last 2 years. How would that affect the Rogue River Canyon, people floating down, visitors, etc.? But they wanted these groups, 5 tables of 8 or 10, to basically prioritize these fires with the resources they had, and then compare it to the other 2. One was the Skeleton Fire, which is up around the Wonder area, and then the Round Prairie Fire. Again, all fictitious, but the second phase was September 10th, the third phase was September 23rd, and just to see the interaction and the pre-organization of these collective groups, really, I came away with some real optimism that should we have another potential mega fire, we are running in place, ready to go. Somewhat along the lines, and talking to the new supervisor over the weekend, when he was ahead of the Six Rivers National Forest, he had at his disposal, which, by the way, that's only 1 million acres. Rogue River Siskiyou National Forest is 2 million acres. We have 1 hotshot crew right now. They're subject to go anywhere wherever the greatest need is, as you know. The Six Rivers National Forest has 4 hotshot crews. Double the engines at the Rogue River in California, double the engines, people, and so our task is to help him get that equipment he needs and to train more firefighters, and we have some things going there that we're very optimistic that we can make a difference and make their job easier and protect a greater level of our forest. So Friday in Salem, I'll stay there tomorrow night. I'll be at the Wolf Action Plan, the ODF and W. That's going to be real interesting. I hope I can bring a real positive report back to the board, and lots of other stuff going on. I think that's enough for today. I'll report next time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Gold?
I'd just like to say I'm looking forward to getting started on a strategic business plan and actually following that, because I think that could go a long ways in helping our county get on the right track. And I've also been working pretty extensively on preparing for the GAO investigation regarding the Chetco Bar fire. So that's it.
All righty, so at this time, we are going to go into executive session, ORS 192-6602F, to consider information or records that are exempt by law from public inspection. And because this is a executive session on a union?
No, thank you, Chair. This is for our rights under a contract, as well as some, we're in a litigation position with a state agency. So we were going to talk about those 2 items.
Well, I think we also need to talk about,
D under subsection 2, 6602D, unions.
Yes.
Okay, good. I was, okay.
No, you weren't here yesterday,
Nope, I didn't
but
submit
we did
that.
have a meeting and we
Okay.
need to speak about
Good.
that.
So those 3 topics are fine. You've given the notice. Thank you.
All right, so this meeting, and we will be back after executive session.
If I could, the press is excluded from the union topic only, but not the other 2. If you want to do the other 2 first, then we could excuse them.
Okay.
He's out of it.
Topic. Yeah.
Boyd's still here. Boyd, if you'd like to stay here for the first 2, and then we'll do the unions last. So we're going to recess our normal meeting and enter executive session. Executive session, the board is to proceed as directed from executive session. This meeting is adjourned.